Hey everyone, Coach Mark here. Hope you guys are having an amazing week. So this week, I was kind of going back and forth as to what it was that I was going to share with you this week. And I just recently read a story out of a book that I'm currently reading. And the story talks about car manufacturing plants back in the 80s and the 90s. And as we know, for those of us that were around then, the United States car manufacturers had a really, really bad reputation back in the 80s and some part of the 90s, right? That's when everyone started moving towards buying Japanese cars. Everybody wanted Hondas and Toyotas and Acuras and all these other Japanese cars because American cars just had a really, really bad reputation. And I never really knew where that came from. I thought maybe it was just that the Japanese cars looked a little cooler, but I was reading this book and it was talking about a manufacturing plant that had actually closed down. It was a GM manufacturing plant, had been closed down for a few years, and they were considering reopening the plant with a partnership with Toyota. And so they go in and they're interviewing some of the people that worked at the plant, and they're describing some of the stuff that was happening at the plant. And when I heard it, I was just like completely I was just blown away. I couldn't believe all this stuff was going on inside the plant. They talked about how everybody would pretty much get drunk every single day. They would make screwdrivers, which for those of you that don't know, screwdriver is a mix of orange juice and vodka. And they'd make screwdrivers and literally put them inside the cars as they went down the assembly lines, and everybody would just be drinking as the cars go down the assembly line. Sometimes when the workers were having grievances with the actual company, with GM, they would do crazy stuff like put the empty liquor bottles inside the door panels. There was just all kinds of craziness that they would do. I heard stories about how they would use the mufflers as a bong to smoke marijuana, how a lot of the employees, one employee was talking about he wasn't as bad as the other ones because he would, he would smoke marijuana and get drunk and actually, and this was kind of crazy, but have sex in the back room while at work now. Right? Keep in mind, like not after work, while work is supposed to be going on. But a lot of the other employees would do even harder drugs, right? They even talked about, and I guess their main objective, GM's main objective at this time was as long as cars were being cranked out down the assembly line, then that was all that was important. As long as they were delivering a certain amount of cars per day, that was their main importance. And they talked about like you just could not for no reason stop the assembly line. So there'd be instances where they would see obvious cars that were not put together properly, and nobody would have stopped the assembly line. The most that would be done is like somebody would put a sticky note on top of the car, like, okay, yeah, the door doesn't look like its work is functioning correctly, or they would mark the car with like some sort of a marker to say that this car wasn't put together correctly, and then they would pull it off at the end, pull it off the assembly line and pull it towards the back, or sometimes they would just let the cars go. And I guess that's why these cars got such a bad reputation. They even talked about like just how you just could not stop the assembly line. One time, there was a guy that was working on a car and he ended up falling inside the pit, I guess underneath the car. And he had a heart attack, but they couldn't stop the assembly line. So they had to wait till the car moved across the assembly line to go in and pull the guy out of the pit. So anyway, and when I heard this, I was just like completely just blown away. I couldn't believe that this type of stuff was actually going on. So they talked about at the Toyota manufacturing plant, because like I said, the reason why they were reopening the manufacturing plant was because GM was going to do a partnership with Toyota. Toyota wanted to start manufacturing cars inside the United States, and because I guess the American government was probably charging way too much taxes for them to bring the cars in. So they decided, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and team up with a company here and start manufacturing all of our cars, or some of our cars here in the United States, so we don't have to pay those crazy import taxes that they're trying to charge us. So Anyway, they brought in a couple of Toyota executives, a couple of GM executives, and some people from the union. And the union, and they were interviewing the employees, and some of the employees were just being candid and talking about some of the stuff that was going on. And I guess they felt that because they were a part of this union, and I guess I live in Atlanta, Georgia, so we don't really have unions, but I've heard stories about unions that if you're part of a union, it's very hard for you to get fired. Like, more than likely, if you're part of a union, you won't get fired as long as you show up to work, And I guess these employees knew that as long as they were cranking cars out along the assembly line, that they wouldn't get fired from their job because they were a part of this union. So it kind of almost gave them the free will to do whatever it was that they wanted to do. Anyway, so they were interviewing them, and they decided, the employees, so part of the stipulation of them reopening the plant was the union said that 80% of the employees that got laid off when the plant had originally closed down would have to be rehired again. So, Toyota and GM kind of had their hands crossed. They had to hire some of these people back, right? And I guess that people knew that. That's why they probably felt open about sharing a lot of the stuff, a lot of the craziness that they were doing. Anyway, they decided to end up, the employees that they would hire, they would take the employees to Japan and see how they operate in Japan. And the American employees were just completely blown away. When they were bringing cars down the assembly line, if something was wrong, they would just stop the assembly line. And the American employees was like, wow, that's crazy. That would never happen in America, right? But Toyota was committed towards excellence. Right? They didn't care. Supposedly, if you stop the assembly line in America, for every minute that the assembly line was stopped, the company would supposedly lose like $18,000, right? But Toyota didn't care about that. Toyota was committed to excellence. They wanted the assembly line to stop if something wasn't right, because their first priority was cranking out a quality car, was cranking out a quality product. And that's why Toyota is at the level that it's at today. That's why Honda is at the level that it's at today. And that's why a lot of the American manufacturers spent so many years trying to rebuild their reputation, because they just had such a bad reputation because they were just really cranking out really shoddy cars. I mean, the employees were, I heard stories about how they would implant. If they had grievances with the with GM, the manufacturers, they would just do all kinds of crazy stuff, leave stuff in the cars purposely, like literally try to destroy the cars. And that's why you probably had so many cars that had such a bad reputation. But you know what? These Japanese car companies, they were just committed to excellence. So I ask you, and I challenge every single one of you that's watching this video today, how committed are you to excellence? Are you, especially if you own your own business or put out some sort of a product, like, are you more concerned with just putting out whatever, the fastest product that you possibly can, or are you committed to putting out the best product that you possibly can? And I can tell you this right now. You may put out a product and you may get someone to buy it, but it's not just about getting someone to buy your product. You want people to come back. You want people to come back, because that's how you make your money. That's how you're successful, is people come back and want to either buy your product, or even if you don't have a product to sell, people just want to deal with you over and over again, because they know that you exhibit excellence. When they see you, they know, you know what? That person is going to give it all they got. They're going to always give it their best shot. One of my mentors, T. Harv Eker, says, how you do anything is how you do everything. And we just all have to keep that in mind, right? We have to definitely keep that in mind and understand that we should always be looking to do the best that we possibly can do. So many people, they just try to get by just doing the bare minimum, and that's not going to work anymore. Right? And the people that have that attitude generally don't get too far. Like, you might make a little money or you might get a few contracts, but you know what? That's not going to last in the long term. So we should always be striving for excellence. Just think about those car manufacturing companies. And that's why Toyota and Honda and all those other companies were able to so surpass GM, Ford, Chrysler. And that's why some of the American car companies ended up closing down, because they just were not committed to excellence. And when they realized that that was what the problem was, they probably spent a good 10, 15, 20 years in building back their reputation, because people just lost faith in them. And you don't want people to lose faith in you. You want people to know that if they come to you for anything, right, whether it be to buy a product, for advice, whatever it is that you have to offer to the world, that they are going to get nothing but excellent, because that's what you are. You are excellent. So you give excellence. You give your all in every single thing that you do. Now, I'm not sure who this video is for, but I hope this video ends up being being of some value to someone that watches it. Thank you much, and until next week.